Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with part two of Today in Sports Betting. This is the NFL version, and we're going to talk a little bit about that battle in the AFC South. Scott, are you psyched? We finally have an AFC South battle that maybe doesn't suck. You know, it's kind of a thing, kind of a signature of the Thursday night games where number one, you almost have to have Jacksonville involved. And number two, whoever they play, they're most likely going to suck. So I'm kind of excited to see an AFC West battle that has the potential to be a decent game. How about yourself?
Yeah, I know that this game does definitely have massive, postseason implications because of the fact that these are pretty much the only two teams competing for the division because the Texans and the Jaguars are both terrible. So this is a very important game. It feels like if Tennessee is going to win this game, the division might already be a wrap, if I'm being completely honest here. But after such a terrible showing by the Colts offense against Baltimore last week, you kind of have to wonder how the Colts are going to respond. Seems like a lot of money has come in on the Colts. I know the Titans were favorites in this pretty much all week at roughly -1 or so. I believe they were even favored -1 or even pick them yesterday. But now the Colts are -1. So it seems like there has been some money coming in on the Colts. I don't know if that means anything because money came in on the Colts last week against Baltimore and they lost by double digits. So this isn't the first time I've seen late money on the Colts. That hasn't panned out, but I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are for the sake of this matchup because it's kind of fascinating that the Colts, I can understand why money came in on the Colts last week because Baltimore had some COVID issues and the game was in Indianapolis and they thought they'd give them a good performance. Money's coming in on the Colts in Tennessee. I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's been really four separate steam moves. There was another one today. They steamed it down from 2.5 is where that actually opened up as the Titans as the favorite, and they steamed it all the way down to Pick'em, and then we one more steam move today. Hasn't been any buyback on the Tennessee Titans yet, Buzz, and that's certainly something to keep an eye on. And I think the problem that I have in this one it's Derrick Henry, and he's not breaking tackles anymore, Scott. He hasn't broken any tackles. Broken 3 tackles over the last 3 weeks. He broke none last week against the Chicago Bears, 21 carries, not one broken tackle. Over his last 4, he's averaged just 3.9 yards per carry, and that is a big difference from the 5.09 that he averaged last season and the 5.77 that he averaged in the first 4 games. So, are they finally wearing Derrick Henry out?
It's possible. I think it also could do with the defense they've been facing. Chicago might have a terrible offense, but defensively they're still very good. So it is possible that Chicago just stacked the box, forced Tannehill to beat them, and Tannehill, from an accuracy perspective, was terrible. But he did enough to end up beating Chicago. Chicago's offense was so bad. So I think that the Chicago one could just be the fact that Chicago was good against the run and the fact that they were stacking the box every play. The Colts, though, are allowing the 3rd fewest rushing yards per game. So the Colts have been very good against the ground so far this season. I think they will have success shutting down Henry in this spot. So I do think Tannehill will be forced to beat them through the air. Overall, Henry seems this season like he's going through waves, where the first couple of games people were thinking, oh, he kind of looks a little bit washed, what's going on right now. Then he was great for about 3-4 games, and then he kind of regressed back to averaging below 4 yards a carry, and people were wondering what's going on with him again. So it seems like Henry's kind of a streaky running back throughout his entire career. Usually used to peak in November, December, but he used to always get off the slow starts. So it seems like putting together a full 16-game unstoppable campaign has never really been his forte. But at the same point, he still usually has a very, very good numbers at the end. So I'm not fully concerned, but I do think that the Colts are very good against the run, especially with Darius Leonard back in the lineup. So I do think that he will struggle in this spot. I think he might reach the end zone once or twice, but from a yards per carry perspective, the Colts are very good against the run. So I do think they will be able to shut him down in this one.
Yeah, the Colts are 3rd in yards allowed, and they're number 1 in yards per attempt. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on with the Tennessee Titans. And Scott, you touched on it. As far as Ryan Tannehill goes, they're kind of using him differently over the last 4 games. They've cut down on his deep balls. They've made him more of a game manager, possession type passer. I mean, he was never going to be a guy that was just going to wing it all over the field. But they've really They've cut down about 2 yards per game, 2 yards per attempt on his passing over the last 4 games. But on the other hand, you got Phyllis Rivers. Sorry, that's a bad habit from having him in the West all these years. Phillip Rivers is your quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Him and that goofy ass loopy delivery that he has. It's I guess he's taught to his kid too. If you've seen any film of his kid playing quarterback,
I wouldn't know. He has about 45 of them.
Well, it's the one that's I guess the high school football stars. You got the same goofy ass delivery. Still couldn't throw a ball.
I just feel old thinking that Phillip Rivers has a kid in high school already.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, my friend. And he's going to be down. Could be down a couple of tight ends. He's going to be missing Jack Doyle, which sucks, and then he could be missing Mo Alley Cox. So haven't made a determination on him. He's questionable for this game. T.Y. Hilton, he doesn't have an injury designation, but he has been hurt the last couple of weeks. And when he's been in there, Scott, he hasn't been great.
I was going to say, I don't think he moves the needle at all because Hilton has been terrible this season.
Yeah, that's a situation where they just haven't meshed from day one. I don't know what it is, but they have not been a good fit. T.Y. Hilton.
You figured maybe it would work out because Rivers, whether or not he has the arm strength or not, loves to chuck the deep ball. And T.Y. as a speedster is usually a pretty good deep option. But for some reason, that just hasn't worked out.
It hasn't, and he hasn't been. He's obviously lost a little zip off his fastball, not able to go deep like he is, but he still will take selective shots. Jonathan Taylor, it's been decent, kind of a mixed bag. You can speak to him. He was a Wisconsin guy. I know you got to see him play a lot. What do you think of his contribution so far to the Indianapolis Colts offense?
Well, he's basically killed my fantasy team, so I feel like that tells you all you need to know. He has just not really clicked fully. I know that in Wisconsin he was dominant. He was one of the best running backs probably in the history of the conference. I'm not going to say he was better than Archie Griffin or anything like that, but he was still very, very good in college. But this year, it just hasn't worked out. And I know that there's usually a transition between rookie year and just to the NFL. But as of right now, last week I feel like was a perfect example. He didn't really average many yards per carry, scored a touchdown, and then he fumbled. Yep. And he ended up getting out-touched by Jordan Wilkins, which has been a trend over the last 2 weeks. Plus, he got Hines, who's doing all the pass catching and all that stuff. So I feel like the Colts have a few too many running backs where you don't really know who's going to be used week in, week out, and most of the running backs just aren't very good. I think Wilkins is okay. I don't think he has much explosiveness, but I think he's reliable. I think he's consistent. I think Taylor does have some play-breaking ability, but he just doesn't have consistency at all. And Hines is a pass-catching specialist who I do think is pretty good, but, of course, he isn't really meant to run inside the tackles. So he's kind of one-dimensional from the pass game perspective. The issue with the Colts that besides having a very, very good offensive line, for some reason that doesn't translate to the run game because they really have not been good at running the ball.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Now, we're going to find out if they're really, really bad because this Tennessee defense has not been good all season long. So if they're going to be able to run the ball, it's going to be against this Tennessee defense.
Well, the one thing that is worth mentioning is that it's kind of an interesting game for Tennessee's defense because they were awful pretty much all season long. They were very good against the Bears, but that means absolutely nothing. I think we could be very good against the Bears.
Right.
But you look at the secondary for Tennessee, they had some serious secondary concerns. They ended up acquiring Desmond King in an absolute steal before the deadline, where they traded roughly a fifth-round pick for him, I think, and he's a very solid corner. And according to recent injury reports, cornerback Adoree Jackson, who hasn't played a game all year with a knee injury, he's back in the lineup. Now, I don't know how many snaps he's going to play. He's one of their best corners, but he definitely will provide a huge boost to the secondary if he's anywhere near 100%.
I got him out, Scott.
I thought I could have sworn I saw on injury reports that he was taken off IR. I thought he was going to be playing.
Well, I'm looking at the updated ESPN here, and he shows designated as out. So
I could have. Oh, never mind. So they activated him from injury reserve, but he's not playing against the Colts. My bad.
Yeah, he returned from IR. He's out.
I thought he was activated, which means he was going to play. So my bad on that. That could definitely play a factor in future weeks. But as for this game in itself, I'm kind of torn because I have some issues with both these teams. I'm going to lean to Tennessee because they're at home, and I think Vrabel's a much better coach than Frank Reich. I think Reich is an okay coach, but at the end of the day, he just puts way too much faith in Phillip Rivers because they can't run the ball. But the one issue I have with Tennessee is that they have absolutely no pass rush. And the one thing I've noticed about these old quarterbacks is that they're really good when they don't have pressure in their face, but when they do, wow, they look bad. And Phillip Rivers seems to be one of those guys who, at this stage in his career, when he has no pass rush, he still looks very good. But when he has guys running around him, trying to cause havoc, he looks awful. So
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. That's the thing for him.
He can't run.
He can't run. He's never. If you make him move laterally, you're in great shape. Tennessee, they did something different last week, Scott. They were the heaviest blitzing team in the league, blitzing on over 45% of the plays. Last week they blitzed none. They've never had a blitz, and they were able to get to Nick Foles for 3 sacks. So, but I don't think that's going to work against Rivers. You're not going to be able to drop guys into coverage. Rivers, if he has time, like you said, he's going to be able to find the guy who's open. So I think you're going to have to get pressure, and I just don't know how that's going to happen against this offensive line.
I'll tell you one of the worst signings from the offseason, just to touch upon that, has to be Jadeveon Clowney for Tennessee. Tennessee signed him late for, and of course, tens of millions of dollars. I know that a lot of people want him. The Giants were linked to him. There were rumors the Eagles might have wanted him. And he showed up to the Titans, and he had the same amount of sacks as us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's been kind of useless.
Yeah, he's been absolutely no good. I think they envision Clowney being the version 2 of the Freak, and that's not worked out well. Scott,
Javon Curse is a Hall of Famer. I can't say the same about Clowney. So,
well, when he came out of college, that was the
when he came out of college, he's to be one of the best defensive linemen since arguably Lawrence Taylor. Like, his expectations were off the charts.
So, how many millions of dollars do you think Clowney made by that one hit, by the way? Blowing the backfield.
A lot. I think he would have been top 5 anyway because the upside and the combine performance was one of the most ridiculous combines of all time.
Right.
So I think he would have been a top 5 pick anyway. That's the issue out of South Carolina is he took plays off. I'm trying to remember meaningful games Clowney's had, and the one game I could think of is the playoff game against Green Bay last year with Seattle, where he was ridiculous.
Right.
And that one game might have actually earned him that contract with Tennessee. But overall in his career, I think he's been one of the more disappointing, I'd say, defensive lineman prospects.
For the money,
he's not been a bust because he has been productive. I believe he made a Pro Bowl or 2. But he has never turned into the guy that people thought he was going to be, especially when he was supposed to be opposite J.J. Watt. People thought that they were looking at one of the best 1-2 combos of all time. And I feel like Clowney kind of never really lived up to his end of the bargain on that one.
No, he's like an overpaid Taco Charlton, basically, to me.
Ouch. That's kind of a shots fired, but fair enough.
I like Indianapolis here, Scott. I think the money's right. I think this team on this play is correct. I'm going to back, and we're laying 1 right now. I'm still okay with that. I'm going to take the Colts minus the 1 point. I just think I think they're able to shut down or at least slow down Henry enough where he doesn't dominate the game. And I think you put this game in Tannehill's hands, I think you're in good shape.
Yeah, for me, agree to disagree. I'm going to go with Tennessee at home. At the end of the day, Tennessee catching a point at home, I think, is a little bit questionable. The Colts are a team that on paper looks pretty good, but if the game is close, Phillip Rivers is going to do something stupid at some point in this game, which is going to make your life extremely stressful. If you take
there's getting to be a groundswell to bench Rivers.
I think Jacoby Brissett's better than Phillip Rivers at this stage in Rivers' career.
Yeah, but the problem is –
I said that weeks ago.
Well, the problem is you've already made a $20 million commitment.
I think it's an awful commitment. We're talking about Clowney's commitment for like $18 million. That Rivers commitment for about 22 isn't aging too well either.
You and I talked about this in the offseason. None of us liked this signing.
It made no sense because I thought Brissett, in his own right, had moments last year before he got injured and the whole season fell apart. Yeah. They had to use Brian Hoyer for a bit, and he was terrible with the Colts. But Brissett, when he was starting with the Colts, they were basically a playoff team.
Yeah.
I didn't think Phillip Rivers moved the needle at all. I actually thought he was worse than Brissett. And he's had moments this season. He had the game against Cincinnati where he looked really good. But once again, these teams with no pass rush, he looked fine. But if you end up putting him with pressure in his face, he's going to be terrible.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think Tennessee is getting any pressure in his face. And
I think that's a fair point. I'm just going to be fading Rivers because I do think Tannehill is a pretty solid quarterback at this stage in his career. And Henry, even though he has struggled a little bit breaking tackles, etc., on 3rd and short, just move the chains. You already know what's going to happen. So I do think on 3rd and short, that definitely gives them an advantage, especially since the Colts can't really run the ball, which has been their serious issue. And if you're going to be one-dimensional with Phillip Rivers back there, good luck to you. I'm not saying that that's not going to work out. I'm just saying that there's a decent chance, and you can agree with it even if you like the Colts, that this whole thing can go awry very quickly.
I'll say this because the Tennessee Titans are a team that turns the other team over a lot. They are. It's really what's kept them in the. Which
is really a paradox because they get after the quarterback rarely, but they force a lot of turnovers, which is kind of a rare thing going on there. But,
so I will say this: I think this is an absolute lock for Indianapolis if they turn the ball over less than
twice. Yeah,
I'll give them one turnover, but if Rivers throws multiple interceptions and they have a fumble. Tennessee's going to be able to do what they do. So, but I'm still going to take the Colts here. I know you like the Titans. So yeah, one of us is going to come on the show tomorrow, and then we're going to be right about this game.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think of what I also liked for this game in terms of a prop, and you kind of touched on it briefly when you were talking about the injuries to some of Indianapolis's tight ends. We talked about how Cox might not play. Doyle's going to be out. Based on that, I have to like the props with Trey Burton, who's actually been pretty good so far this season for the Colts. I know that they've kind of used him occasionally in some type of even just a wildcat offense. They've used him as the quarterback on some read option stuff, which I find pretty fascinating because you don't really use that with a tight end that often. However, I do think that he's still a solid tight end. I know it's pretty difficult to find lines on him. But right now, FanDuel has Burton at 28.5 receiving yards. I got to like the over, assuming that Cox is questionable. He's probably going to be limited, and Doyle's going to be out. And it seems like Burton has been one of Rivers' favorite targets so far this season. So 28.5 for receiving yards does seem a little bit low to me when it comes to Trey Burton. You have any thoughts on that?
It's not bad.
I don't know what other weapons the Colts have.
He's had 15 catches on the year, and like I said, his usage should get bumped up a little bit. So I can see him. He's averaging about 8 yards per catch. Yeah, I can see him with 4 catches. I'm
trying to think of who else the Colts really have as a weapon. They got Pittman in the rookie, who missed a couple games, but he's back. He hasn't really done much this season. Hilton's been a disaster. They can't really run the ball. I don't know. You got Pascal.
Yeah, you got Zach Pascal. You got Marcus Johnson.
Yeah, and they're fine.
Right.
They're okay. But at the end of the day, you have to wonder with Tennessee, with Desmond King, who's a very solid corner. I don't know who's going to be matched up on, but I don't want to say he's a lockdown corner, but he's at this stage in the NFL a very solid cornerback. It wouldn't surprise me to see Rivers go to old reliable with the tight ends because Rivers does love his tight ends. He always has.
Well, he's always had good tight ends too. So.
Correct, and I don't think Burton's that bad. I think Burton's a pretty underrated tight end, and I know he's been around for a while. I think he's pretty good.
Okay. All right, good enough. There you have it, guys. Anything else on this one, Scott?
I'd lean to the under. It's not really a strongly. I know that you have an actual play on this, so you can't really talk about it. But I know money has come in on the under. It's gone from roughly 50.5 to 48.5. I just find the Colts to be a decent under team because Rivers is always going to be one of those guys who is in danger of throwing an interception in the red zone, which is always a dream come true for under bettors. The defense is still very, very good. They stop the run. They can get after the quarterback. The Colts defense is very underrated, and the secondary has been good this season. And Rivers is going to make a bunch of mistakes and look potentially old at times. So for me, I think this game will be very close. I think it'll probably be around 24-20, something like that. So for me, I'm going to lean to the under.
All right, very good. Very, very good. And if you want to get an even deeper dive into this, you guys know where to go. It's winnersandwhiners.com.
Oh, and also with the under, you have to wonder about Gostkowski, who seems to have reverted back to, I don't want to say week 1 vibes, but he was looking pretty good there for about 3 weeks. And ever since then, it kind of hit a wall again. So the issue I have with Tennessee is, do you trust the kicking game? No. Do you like Indianapolis's defense? Of course. Do you trust Phillip Rivers the entire 60 minutes? No. So there's a lot of reasons why a lot of mistakes could happen where some 5-minute drives, 6-minute drives come up with no points. And that's what you're looking for as an under-better. So that's another element. The special teams for Tennessee, not exactly that great because Gostkowski has been very inconsistent, and riding the recent trend, he has not been good over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're right. Very good. All right. That's a good. Any other final?
No, that's it. Sorry, you can go back to wrapping it up.
Yeah, no worries. Just make sure you check out winnersandliners.com. Deep dives, no deeper dives than we do on Monday and Thursday. So it's a sight to behold. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. Make sure that you also like this video, subscribe to our channel, all the regular stuff there on the YouTubes. And that's going to be a wrap for myself, for Scott Reichel, for all of us over here at winnersandliners.com. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Hope every one of those tickets in your pocket turns into cash money back at the window. And we will see you tomorrow on Today in Sports Betting. Take care, everybody.